What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Week 9 Pro Football Focus Show here on RotoGrinders. I am Britt Devine, joined today by a very special guest, currently a starting quarterback in the NFL, has reclaimed his rightful starting job on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Ryan Fitzpatrick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure. Big fan. Big shoes to fill for Scott Barrett, of course. I was on Disney a couple of weeks ago. I brought back with me a special guest. We sent him across the country. Welcome, Tigger. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Let's get into some Week 9. I think we're going to have a fun time this week.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun here today. So these are all like impromptu costumes, by the way. I wasn't planning on doing anything about like 10 minutes before the show. I got a sugar high from all the leftover candy. I'm tilting my face off from this Tyus Jones news in basketball. I threw on a costume, and then within about 2 minutes, both my co-hosts transformed. So we got a nice little fun show impromptu for you guys here today. How do Week 8 go for everybody? Scott, I had myself a pretty good week. Outside of Week 1, I had my best MME, or actually Mr. Fitzpatrick. How do Week 8 go for you? Are you allowed to play any DFS in the NFL?
Yeah, man. I think
do whatever you want.
I forgot I'm in character. I was like, but yeah, made some good money, even though I went all in on Jameis. Tyler, I think, had the same problem that I did. Smash everywhere but the QB spot. Oh, also the tight end spot. That was rough.
I had Jameis, but I had like Todd Gurley, and I had a whole bunch of. I had James Conner, so I was able to weather the storm. Tigger, how'd it go for you on Week 8?
Oh, I smashed it. Won every head-to-head, finished first place in every 50-50, every multiplier. I smoked it. Did really well on DK as well, and then just absolutely smashed on Yahoo. It was a really good week for me.
Yeah, we're going to hopefully be able to help everybody out. Oh, too, I want to show everybody this, by the way. I got my Cinderella purse here, too, by the way, everybody. So I'm fully prepared. Have a good show here today. Real quick, I have some housekeeping I got to talk to here behind the scenes at RotoGrinders. First off is, oh my goodness, hold on. I've got the wrong email here. Hold on, everybody. Crunch Time. So the Crunch Time and Court Report, this is for NBA, would have helped us out with Tyus Jones tonight. We're going to give that to you for free on Friday. So if you ever wanted to try to check that stuff out behind the scenes here at RotoGrinders, on Friday, you'll get a dose of Crunch Time leading up to half an hour before lock on the premium show, and you'll get the Court Report live blog with up-to-the-minute news and analysis. We'll give you a free showing of that on Friday. And also for Fanball, we're doing a little promo with them. They have these intense DFS auctions where you're kind of bidding with 6 other people on 4 players all at the same time. It's really fun. It's fanball.com/rotogrinders. It's kind of a new site. It's tied to kind of things like My Fantasy League and a couple other things out there you might have heard about. But it's fun. They have regular DFS as well. If you want to go check it out, it's in the forums. If you deposit through the links on RotoGrinders, if you deposit $20, we will give you a $20 instant deposit bonus. So there's no playthrough required. You're able to use that $20 immediately in auctions or on their DFS platform. So make sure to go check that out. All right. Enough with the costumes. Well, actually, we're going to have to stay in character for one of these here in a second here, Mr. Fitzpatrick. But first, I want to start with you. We're going to do stud, a value, and a dud at each position this week. The top is very, very easy this week. There's 2 quarterbacks. You guys both have them highlighted. Tyler, I'll start with you. I think he's going to tie for probably what Jameis Winston did a couple of weeks ago when I thought he was going to be one of the highest owned quarterbacks. We've got Cam Newton at home against the Buccaneers, who are giving up, I think, 33 actual real-life NFL points every game as a defense. How does Cam not come through this week?
Yeah, the Bucs defense ranks last or next to last in just about every statistical category you can think of. Passing yards, passing touchdowns, completion percentage, yards per attempt, quarterback rating, and most importantly, fantasy points. Newton has scored at least 24 DK points in 5 of his last 6 outings. He's coming off a season high in both completion percentage and yards per attempt, and that was against a really stout Baltimore Ravens secondary. He was wheeling and dealing last week in that matchup. But the thing that we love about Cam is his Konami rushing floor. That's what we covet in cash games. But it's just his matchup here with this historically poor Tampa Bay secondary that gives him the ceiling worth pursuing in tournaments. He's a smash spot. Don't overthink it.
Very easily reachable as well, because for some reason, DraftKings, hey, if you're out there, Todd Gurley goes for like 45 fantasy points every single week. You don't have to lower his price. You have to raise it. So he's just 9,500 this week. We've got Cortland Sutton chalk we'll talking about in a little bit. It's very easy to reach either one of the two elite quarterbacks. Scott, you want to talk about Pat Mahomes as your stud. These are two can't-miss options this week. Is he worth the extra $500 to you?
Probably not, but I have to talk up an expensive quarterback, and he would be
there's only two.
The one I'd mention after Tyler took the other one first. But there honestly is a really strong case to be made for Mahomes. So his 222.9 fantasy points through his 8 games this year. That's the third most by any quarterback all time. Really, he's only had 2 sort of underwhelming performances. That was against Jacksonville and in Denver. But he threw for at least 300 yards and a rushing touchdown in both of those games. And they really weren't down games if you factor in the strength of the opponent. So his 313 yards against Jacksonville was the most he allowed since the 2016 season. His 304 passing yards against Denver was the most by a road quarterback against them since the 2014 season. Putting up the most fantasy points per game of any quarterback by a significant margin this season. And yeah, sure, it's a tough matchup, but it looks to me like he's wholly matchup proof, and he's on a borderline historic pace, and he's really not that egregiously priced. So he's definitely in contention, could be a slate buster. And the far bulk of Kansas City's touchdowns are going through him, and they're projected to score quite a few touchdowns again on Sunday. So there's a lot to like with him.
Yeah, what I like about him too is I don't always stack in cash games because of some of the value you have out there. You can actually use him with Travis Kelce this week pretty easily to get. We're paying like $4,500 for zeros at tight ends. I'm done with that. I'm done doing things like that. So I'm just going to pay up for Travis Kelce this week. I think on my cash teams, it's pretty reachable, and you can use Mahomes. So Tyler. Don't talk bad about our co-host here. He's right across. He's on the internet with us. He can reach across the screen, and he can smack you down if he needs to today. So you've got him listed as your value quarterback of the week. You've got Ryan Fitzmagic in here. You can't diss him too hard. He's right on the show here with us.
I've got nothing but love for Fitzmagic here. I mean, look at it. If you combine Jameis and Fitzmagic's fantasy outings through the first 7 games, they would trail only Patrick Mahomes. The Fitz-Winston combination has gone for 2,634 passing yards over the first 7 games of the season. That passing number is the second highest in league history through a team's first 7 games. They're trailing only the greatest show on turf, and that's just by 3 yards. Tampa Bay has now faced a Panthers defense that's allowed 3 300-yard passers, multiple passing touchdowns to 5 of the 7 quarterbacks they faced. I think Fitz money gets it done here. Great price, great opportunity. And for anyone who's quick to forget, his first 3 outings to start the year, 45, 34, and 31 DraftKings points. The guy can get it done.
Mr. Ryan Fitzpatrick, are you going to throw a couple of picks and get benched halfway through this game? I need to know.
No, that's not going to happen. So the common misconception is that I am bad. I am not bad. James is bad. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the second highest rated quarterback per Pro Football Focus. He's leading all quarterbacks in passer rating. And by my data, he combines with Winston to actually put up the most fantasy points per game, even more so than Patrick Mahomes, at least by FanDuel and DraftKings scoring.
All right, let's talk about your other value play, Mr. Fitzpatrick, who I think is going to end up, it's very clearly, people are going to play Cam Newton, people are going to play Patrick Mahomes, and then people are going to play Jared Goff in what should be another shootout for the Rams, this time in New Orleans this week. He was $6,000 last week, has a really good game, still just $6,000. How are you breaking this down here? So let's transform into Scott here. This is really tough for me, right? I'm looking at Cam Newton, 6,600. The 600 doesn't really do too much for me on the rest of my team, so I think I'm going to go with Newton. But that 600 could save you a lot and get you something, in a tournament. So let's talk a little bit about Goff.
Yeah, so early into this week, I figured I would just be all in on Ryan Fitzpatrick as like the clear best play. But on DraftKings, I mean, Goff is only 500 more. We know he has massive upside when he's forced to pass. And why wouldn't he be forced to pass this week against the Saints, which are one of the best offenses in football and the most glaring pass funnel defense in football? Sure, he's on the road and he has some weird home road splits, but I mean, it's Coors Field allegedly, right? But yeah, so the Saints, 80% of their yards allowed has been via the pass. That ranks most in the league. On top of that, they're giving up the sixth most points per drive, 2.69. So just really a glaring pass funnel, big upside, pretty cheap. Only concern is that Todd Gurley has something like 67% of the team's touchdowns since last year. So, you could probably get away with just playing Todd Gurley instead. But of course, in a tournament, anything's possible.
We'll talk about you've got Gurley coming up in the next segment here. So you just rattled off some good stats on the Saints defense. We'll have to see. I mean, I'm playing Todd Gurley. I don't really care what kind of stats you can come up with about the Saints defense. I'm going to play the touchdown machine right now in the NFL. A couple of dud quarterbacks. I don't really think we're going to have too many problems dismissing these guys. Alex Smith is just horrible. It was clearly Andy Reid, all those weapons in Kansas City made him. He's struggling as a fantasy quarterback this year. The team's doing all right. They're really good defensively. I think they're playing Alex Smith football. They're letting Adrian Peterson win, and they're trying to win with defense. Alex Smith isn't going to win too many games for him, so I'm in agreement here. I'm going to be fading Alex Smith.
Yeah, I feel like DraftKings is kind of daring us to play him at just $5K this week, but I'm not biting. I mean, find the other $300 to get up to Joe Flacco. Find the other $500 to get up to Fitzpatrick. The guy just has no ceiling this week, despite the good matchup here against Atlanta. He's flopped in every other great matchup he's had this year. He's scored more than 16 points just twice. There's very little ceiling to pursue here. I think we can move on.
Yeah, I'd play Flacco. I'd play Keenum. I'd play Darnold. I'd play all right, I won't play the Bills quarterback. I was joking on that. I wouldn't do that one. But I'd play all those other guys before Alex Smith. And another guy, we've kind of been talking about this, just not a real good life quarterback, Scott. And in today's NFL, I don't know, I don't think Jameis Winston's really good, but I'll play him in fantasy. But he's got so many good weapons around him. Mitchell Trubisky's kind of another guy. I don't really have a lot of interest. I faded him last week. He's won the Millionaire Maker twice this year, but just not a guy I don't think I've rostered more than a couple of occasions this year in tournaments.
Yeah, he's our second worst starting quarterback behind only Sam Darnold. He got comped to Tim Tebow on the PFF main podcast. Matchup isn't really ideal for the pass, so I will pass.
Yeah, I'd play Russell, Breeze, Matt Ryan, Baker Mayfield, I'd play all these guys around him before I take a shot. I know he's got the rushing upside, which can be really good for fantasy. But I'm going to take a hard pass on that. So, Mr. Fitzpatrick, I'm going to go and we're going to talk about your actual opportunity article. Every week, I like to give you a couple minutes to highlight this. Let's see what your alter ego can come up for us this week on week 9. What happened last week? What are some guys in the season that look like they might get some positive regression for us?
Yeah, so I was actually swamped with work on Wednesday, or Tuesday, which was the trade deadline. So I kind of approached this a little bit differently. Instead of just writing the 2,000 words I typically do, I just covered more ground, more names, and just
you guys hired someone at Pro Football Focus to throw all these fancy graphics out here, didn't you?
No, I think it's just the same guy who's always been doing it, who's maybe improved, but they look.
Yeah, the article looks real good.
Yeah, so shout out to Daniel Kelly. But yeah, you could skim through it, take a look. Larry Fitzgerald seems back to his old ways, good volume the last 3 weeks. Shout out to John Proctor, who put me on Larry Fitzgerald last week. Had 100% exposure to him on DraftKings. I don't think anyone else besides the Power Hour guys were on him, but should have known because he had a good volume the 2 weeks before that too. Talking about Cortland Sutton, he's a name I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Jarvis Landry, we're at the point now with him where it's, all right, when's the regression coming? Is it coming, or is this like Zay Jones in 2017 or Allen Robinson in 2016 where, maybe just the offense is so bad, he's just not a wide receiver one who can carry an offense. But those are some of the things I talked about in the article this week.
Yeah, always very in-depth, a good read every week. If you've got a Pro Football Focus subscription, I think you get this for just the regular $40 ones to get you all the fantasy, get you the grades, get you the wide receiver cornerback matchup chart. Definitely.
I will say, yeah, don't forget to scroll to the bottom to look at the best DFS values. A guy I can talk about maybe a little bit later is Willie Snead, who's one of the top values by DraftKings and FanDuel, and he has a great matchup this week. So I'm going to have a lot of exposure to him.
I'm trying to snipe Snead in a dynasty league, but the guy's team, he's tanking for this year and next year. He has no reason to have Snead, but he won't give him up. I want Willie Snead. He might watch the show, but if you're out there, trade me Willie Snead. Kind of a Willie Snead rant, but I do agree. I do like Willie Snead some this week. All right, let's go to running backs, and let's go to Tyler. I feel like this is backwards because you had to get to the sheet first, because there's no way Scott let you steal Darius Sanders from him this week. We've got Christian McCaffrey in the nut spot. He's just, what is he? Oh, he must already be in my lineup.
I'm actually not on Darius Sanders, and I don't think it's a nut spot.
All right, so we'll have to talk. You'll have to explain this because you're one of his biggest fans. Tyler, what do you got for me? Basically, anything you look at defensively, Tampa Bay is horrible at. This looks like a really good spot. The only problem I'm having is I'm going to get Todd Gurley, and I'd much rather play Todd Gurley, and I'd much rather play a couple guys in the mid-range, and I'm running out of room to get Christian McCaffrey onto some of my teams.
Yeah, I mean, his price tag at 7,800 is a little difficult on DK. I like him a bit more in FanDuel, actually, despite it being half PPR. But like you said to start it off, the Buccaneers defense is one way you attack at every single level. McCaffrey is also seeing the lion's share of touches here in this backfield by a large majority. He's seen 84% of the team's running back touches so far this year, 96.3% of the team's offensive snaps. Those are both huge market shares. This matchup could be one that's up-tempo. Look for a lot of touches from McCaffrey when they get the lead. He's averaging 19.4 touches per game entering this contest, and we've already seen 3 backs hit their ceilings here against this Buccaneers defense with 30-plus DraftKings points. They now add Jason Pierre-Paul to the injury list. That includes Gerald McCoy and Vinny Curry. Both those guys were now limited in practice. They might make their return this week, so be sure to keep an eye on that. But with opponents scoring on 88% of the red zone trips against the Bucs, I think McCaffrey has a really good chance here to reach pay dirt as either a runner or as a receiver.
Yeah, the Bucs 15th in DVOA against the run, but 29th in DVOA against pass-catching running backs, also allowing the 5th highest yards per attempt to opposing backs in the passing game. Seems like a really good spot, Mr. Fitzpatrick. Why the hate on your boy, Christian McCaffrey?
So I wanted to play him in this spot twice last year, and in both spots he failed. I wanted to play him against New England for the same reason. It's like so Tampa Bay's hemorrhaging points to the slot wide receiver. Does that translate to McCaffrey, who is slot-ish, and now he busted in that matchup as well. He just hasn't been seeing as good volume, not as good production since Greg Olson's return. And per my matchup model, Devin Funchess actually easily has the best receiver matchup of the week, which surprised me because you want to play Tampa Bay against the slot. And he's not really seeing too many slot targets, but so I'll probably go that way to get my exposure on non-Cam Newton lineups.
All right, let's talk about Todd Gurley for a little bit. I don't know if I want to spend too much time. He's underpriced again on DraftKings. I think I haven't opened up FanDuel yet this week. I heard through the rumblings he's like over $11,000 or something like that now on FanDuel, so more rightfully priced over there if that's correct. But DraftKings, he just keeps putting up 30-plus fantasy point games, and they keep lowering his salary. It doesn't make sense to me, but it is what it is. I'm going to be playing Todd Gurley on my cash games. I think as it stands right now, do you have any disagreement with that?
Well, no, I wrote him up, so definitely not. He's putting up numbers we really have only ever seen once from any player at any position ever, and it was one season from LaDainian Tomlinson, the fantasy GOAT. So I'm not going to question this. I'm just going to continue to ride it out until I start losing money, and I think that's the way to go.
Latavius Murray put up 18, I think, half PPR points last week against the Saints. Call me crazy. I think Todd Gurley might be able to outdo Latavius Murray a little bit in fantasy points this week. So I'm not concerned at the least in any of these run-stopping numbers that the Saints are throwing out at us right now. Tyler, a value running back that you have this week. A little bit interesting. Might not have the best game script going for him, but it seems you got a little something going on down below for Mr. Nick Chubb. Just a horrible fun there.
Oh, terrible. All right, let's start over. So the Chiefs entered this matchup. They're 8.5 point road favorites here. I think that's really big for them. Not really buying that here against this huge Jacksonville Browns. I'm expecting a big bounce back here for Cleveland. The Chiefs are one of the few run funnel defenses that we can target every week. They're our lowest graded run defensive unit. They're surrendering the second most DK points to opposing backs. Chubb's seen 18 carries in each of the last 2 games. He even had 3 targets last week, showing some upside there. This play really comes down to game script and whether or not you think the Browns defense can keep them in this game or not. Cleveland at home has allowed 21.3 points per game to opponents compared to 31.3 when on the road. That's a whopping 10-point difference. If they can keep Mahomes in check, they're allowing a league low 77.1 QBR. Then I think Chubb could go off for major fantasy points. He's seeing a lot of touches, and I think he's a guy that I think I want in play.
We've got a battle brewing here on Peyton Barber. He is on Scott's value list, and Tyler is going to come back and try to KO him on the dud list. So, Scott, let's start with you. I don't know how Peyton Barber has become such a hot topic here between you and Tyler, but let's hash it out and see who's on the right side.
Yeah, I hope Tyler's right so I could cross him off. But just the same thing as what Sammy Watkins was for me last week, why I wrote him up. He's just, looking at the names of different guys, and he was just clearly the top value at what is he, 3,600 on DraftKings. Mm-hmm. Not excited about him. I don't like it.
Current projected ownership, by the way, is just 5%. This is late Wednesday, so that always changed, but I don't know. That probably seems about right to me.
I mean, 3,600 for 15 low upside carries and 2 targets. It's whatever. Let's hear Tyler's counter.
All right, Tyler, what do you got?
He's just a guy that can get quickly game scripted out if things don't go the Bucs' way. He's also playing with an aggressive downfield thrower in Fitzmagic, who rarely looks to check to him. In the 5 games Fitzpatrick played with him this year, Barber averaged 1.2 targets per game during that span. He's also scored less than 4 points in 4 of his last 6 outings. If he doesn't reach the end zone, and Carolina is tied with the LA Rams for the second fewest red zone trips per game allowed at just 2.4 per game, Barber has literally no ceiling if he doesn't score.
I feel like Tyler just made a good enough case, Scott, and you didn't have as much enthusiasm. I'm going to give this to Tyler. Did he talk you off of Peyton Barber?
No, I mean, he's still 3,600, so he's in play.
All right. I'm currently agnostic on Peyton Barber. I have no Peyton Barber takes, good or bad. I'll have to dive into that myself as the week progresses. Scott, you've got as your dud, LaShawn McCoy. How can you roster anybody on the Bills offense and do this?
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much the case. Like, what's his touchdown expectation? It's a bad ground game matchup. He's not going to have good game script. The offense is a mess. He's going to have to do all of his damage through the air. I mean, he was all right last week, but yeah, I don't see that continuing.
Being a parent can be really challenging. Child and Family Resource Network focuses on connecting pregnant parents and those with kids under the age of 5 with free support services to help them on their parenting journey. Everyone deserves someone they can turn to for help with parenting. Visit childandfamilyresourcenetwork.org today.
He doesn't have a he doesn't have a touchdown the entire season so far. I mean, if you add a touchdown onto his totals, it won't look horrible at 4,900, but that's a pass for me. Against Chicago, no way I'm going to do that. So I'm kind of in agreement with you on that one. All right, let's run it to a couple fun things here at PFF. Tyler, I want to talk a little bit about so if you go to the wide receiver cornerback chart on Pro Football Focus, if you click up near the top, you can see the points allowed. And that's it gives you quarterback, running back, receiver, and it gives you slot matchups. It gives you all this kind of stuff that's directional and all kinds of stuff. I noticed I was looking at Christian McCaffrey up at the top for Carolina. It looks like against running backs, PFF's got that charted as a positive matchup. It's not 3 pluses, but it's 1. That's something I noticed this week for Mr. Darius Sanders. Tyler, did you come up with anything good here on either one of these charts for the people?
You nailed on exactly what I was going to look at. The Carolina team, just going across that entire row there. Yeah. We've got Tampa Bay, second most points allowed at quarterback, top 10 in running back, third in wide receiver, number 1 in tight end. There are no Panthers you can't play this week, in my opinion. If you scroll down a bit to the New Orleans Saints, this game here against the Rams, really like the idea of playing Michael Thomas and Traquan Smith.
Which one are you on, the top one or the bottom?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's LAR is the first column.
All right. So I think that's the Rams offense, I believe. Then.
Oh, you're right. It's the Rams. I'm sorry. I misread this one. Rams versus Saints. So what we're looking here is for every Ram wide receiver in play, basically. They're giving up the second most fantasy points to the wide receiver position, 43.0. I think you can go with anybody. Cooper Kupp's a guy that I'm super interested in here. Great way to attack the slot of this defense.
Yeah, don't forget those Josh Reynolds touchdowns last week. So those are really Cooper Kupp's touchdowns. So they should be coming back this week. I do like that one. So this is a really fun interactive chart. This included in your Edge subscription too. They're always coming up with new stuff, new articles at PFF. And if you scroll down to this, you might not know you have it. If you have the subscription, you can get the left versus right versus slot. Scott does a lot of this on his own, does a little bit differently. But this is a pretty accurate thing. I believe Jeff Ratcliffe put this together for PFF. So check it out. Jeff definitely knows what he's talking about when it comes to that. I want to talk about the snaps and pace article. Either one of you have any strong takes? You know, he's got Pat Thorman always at the top. Buccaneers and Panthers, that's up near the top. Steelers and Ravens. This is one. Let's talk about this one, Scott, for a second. What's your thoughts on this game? Because the pace looks good. The Steelers are on the road, so you're not going to see as much no huddle. But the Ravens play at a big pace. Do you have any takes in this game? It's not a game a lot of people are talking about this week. Anything specific you can note on this?
Yeah, I do. So James Conner is one of my top values just based on recent volume. However, he busted in this spot earlier this year, and it's a tough running back matchup. And really everyone on Pittsburgh's side busted in this matchup despite it being at home. Though I will say the best matchups for Pittsburgh players are Vance McDonald and Juju Smith-Schuster, who operate in the middle of the field, which is where Baltimore is most susceptible. And then on Baltimore's side, I really do like Willie Snead quite a bit. I'm going to have heavy exposure to him, but the Crabtree is still a bit of a value on one of the sites. I forget which one as well.
Yeah, so interesting. I'm going to have to read through this. Haven't had a timeout between basketball and football and all this Halloween stuff I got going on tonight. Haven't had a chance to read Pat's article, but it's one of the must things. There's this one. I read Ben Gretch's article. That's a recent addition this year on the Fantasy Insider / RotoGrinders. I read that. And then Evan Silva's article. Those are kind of like the three main information sheets that I read every week. Also Scott's opportunity article here on Pro Football Focus. Let's talk some receivers now. I think some of these guys are going to go a little under-owned in tournaments because guys like, all right, we could use Thielen, we can use Brown, we can use Hopkins, we could use Mike Evans, we could use Tyreek Hill. You could take a shot on Julio Jones because he's cheap. I think Michael Thomas is going to draw some ownership by looking at the numbers I'm looking at here. Tyler, you want to talk about Nuke Hopkins. He's got a new teammate, probably not completely acclimated. They lost Will Fuller. Kiki QT might not play. They're not going to be throwing a bunch of checkdowns to Lamar Miller. This looks like Nuke Hopkins' offense from last year when he was just getting peppered the entire season.
You nailed it. Target funnel all going to Hopkins now with all of his teammates banged up and on the sideline. I think the Broncos are also going to focus a ton on limiting their former teammate in DT offensively. Yeah. Could shape up for a lot of targets going Nuke's way. The Broncos pass defense has allowed the 5th most pass plays of 20-plus yards, and they've given up the 3rd most passing touchdowns of 20-plus yards. So big plays galore are possible here for Hopkins. Bradley Roby, injury, DNP already on Wednesday, just makes this matchup even more exciting. Hopkins ranks 3rd in air yards, 2nd in market share of air yards, 2nd in Whopper, is 29.5% target share, combined with his big playability down the field and in the red zone, where he leads all players with 12 targets inside the 10-yard line. It makes him my number 1 wide receiver this week from like a price / ownership perspective. I think Michael Thomas will be the cash play, but Nuke's the one that I want to gravitate towards in tournaments.
Scott, you want to talk about a couple people. Neither one of you have Michael Thomas, so we'll talk about Michael Thomas after you talk about your guys. You got Mike Evans to yourself. You like your teammate there. You had a good connection before you got benched for throwing all those interceptions. And then you got Adam Thielen, who's just 100 yards every. So how can you not like Adam Thielen? Seems like silly to try to doubt Adam Thielen. But what do you see specifically in these matchups, Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, and DeAndre Hopkins would be in that 3 ahead of Thomas for me. But yeah, that's a really strong, solid 3. Evans is actually hurt, so that makes it a little bit more questionable. But he is easily the best wide receiver play on FanDuel. Landry, a guy I can't stay away from. He's up there too. But Evans is probably top wide receiver value play on FanDuel. He's averaging 27.6 fantasy points per 40 pass attempts with Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's 14.7 more than with Winston. Also 10.3 targets per 40 attempts. That's 2.2 more than with Winston. And I've written a bunch of articles on this. Really, what the change in quarterbacks means is way better efficiency, way better volume, way better production for the wide receivers. For whatever reason, Winston throughout his entire career, very efficient when targeting tight ends, woefully efficient when targeting wide receivers, also doesn't like to look to them as often. Meanwhile, the exact opposite is the case for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Check out some of my recent articles where I talk about that. Then Adam Thielen, he's on a historic pace. He's seeing ridiculous volume. Stephon Diggs has crept up in volume, sure, but Adam Thielen is the one who has the best matchup of the week per our wide receiver versus cornerback chart against Nevin Lawson. And Stephon Diggs is going to be the one shadowed by Darius Slay, which is a tough matchup, should funnel more production and volume towards Thielen. This is a glaring run funnel spot. A lot of people don't even want to play Minnesota. We're actually, I think, Cousins is actually a great contrarian play no one's going to be on. But Detroit ranks second worst in opposing passer rating. They're just a really bad defense all around. Maybe adding Snacks makes Minnesota a little bit more likely to go pass heavy. I don't know. But those 3 expensive wide receivers, I really want to play all of them. They're all in good spots.
All right. I want to talk about a player who's gotten in his last 4 games. These are his target totals: 4, 5, 9, and 6. Michael Thomas. It seems like over the past, he started off on fire. Everyone wanted to pay $9,500 or whatever it was for Michael Thomas. He's come back down to earth since they've got Mark Ingram back. They're kind of splitting duties back there. Haven't really seen it from Michael Thomas. What are we doing here? 7,600, currently projected to be one of the highest owned wide receivers of the week. Tyler, I want to spend a couple seconds on him. What are your thoughts on him?
I think that price tag makes him unavoidable. I mean, he's really hard to fade. He was $100 more than OBJ was last week, and he just went nuclear. I think the problem is that we're worried about run script, where the Saints team has been running a ton since Ingram's returned. It's really cut down in his target share, like you mentioned. But the matchup's kind of ideal. I mean, a 60-point total is unreal. We should see a lot of volume, both passing and just in terms of pace as well, as mentioned in Pat's article. Matchup here is pretty good against Marcus Peters as well. He's allowed the 7th most yardage for a cornerback, 2nd most touchdowns allowed. I think it's a get-right spot here for Michael Thomas.
Would you rather Michael Thomas and any tight end not named Travis Kelce, or would you rather pick a Lions wide receiver and play Travis Kelce with him, Tyler?
Yeah, I'd be fine going to battle with Galladay and Kelce. Yeah,
I think that sounds good to me currently right now. Scott, what's your take on Michael Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, it's that total. That's what you have to decide, and it's a tough call. And how bad is Peters? Is he bad? I mean, there was that 3-week stretch where he was easily the worst cornerback. But then every week outside of that, he's been great, except for, last week against Devontae Adams. But look at the cornerbacks Adams has faced and destroyed this year. It's been all of PFF's best, highest rated cornerbacks, like Tre'Davious White, like Darius Slay, like Xavier Rhodes. So that's a question. Does Peters shadow again? Is Peters good? What does New Orleans do? Do they go run heavy, kind of like they've been doing since Ingram's been in the lineup? It makes sense given the matchup. Los Angeles the past 2 years is just kind of begging teams to run on them. I don't know. It's a tough call. Like I said, he's a tier below the other 3 wide receivers I like, despite him being cheap on DraftKings, I guess.
Yeah, I don't have a strong take right now. He didn't make my first run through on a cash team. I'm focusing on Gurley and a couple cheap wide receivers to get Travis Kelce. I'm done paying for tight ends that give me like 2 or 3 fantasy points or zeros, and I don't see that happening with Travis Kelce this week. So I don't know. I think Kelsey's pretty affordable. That's kind of where I'm leaning currently on Wednesday night. Value receivers. Tyler, you've got Smokey Brown. He is 5,800, probably a little bit more than most people would want to pay for, but he has reasonable ownership. Has been a little bit more miss than hit than he was to start the season when he was more hit than miss. But the air yards, the targets are still reasonably there. This is a game they're probably going to have to throw in order to win. I still think Pittsburgh's able to score some points here. He's pretty good. It's tough to pay for John Brown when you're staring at Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay, who are going to get a bump in targets this week, in my opinion. And I think that's where my fantasy dollars are going in the mid-tier.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Brown is definitely a tournament play because he's as volatile as they come. But, I mean, you don't win GPPs with a 5 for 50 stat line. That's why I like Brown. I'd rather take the risk with the boom-bust weeks with the chance of taking down a tournament. I tweeted this out earlier this week. There have only been 12 occurrences of a wide receiver hitting 200-plus air yards in a single game. Brown has 3 of those occurrences. He netted 205 air yards against Pittsburgh in their last matchup, but got really unlucky. Just 3 catches, 116 yards, and a score. That was on 7 targets. I'm not worried at all about this matchup here in the secondary. Joe Hayden's playing extremely well, but the only guys he's shadowed so far this year are big body wide receivers like Julio, AJ Green. We haven't really seen him target a guy of Brown's stature. So I really like this play as far as a potential ceiling option here for Brown. I think this is a game that is going to hit the over. We saw last year, as Pat mentioned, that I think it was 144 plays were run in that game, which is a ton. That was in the second matchup of Pittsburgh and Baltimore in their last year. So I think Brown overall is a guy that I want in my player pool. I just like his ceiling here this week.
All right, Scott, let's talk about the chalk of the week with all the trades. Cortland Sutton, he's at home now against the Texans with Demaryius Thomas traded. Looks like he's in a really good spot. And despite seeing 16 less targets than Thomas this year, Sutton just had 54 less air yards. And some people make fun of air yards. I like air yards. I think it's a very meaningful fantasy statistic, kind of like Tyler did with John Brown when you're looking for upside. The DVOA against number 2 wide receivers too, which I don't know if it translates specifically, but the Texans are 30th in that. What do you see in this match? Is there anything we're missing in this matchup where Sutton just isn't the clear plug him in and then get all the studs you want elsewhere play?
I mean, I'm going that route. You could definitely make a case against it, but I'm going to be playing him on the majority of my lineups. Per Ian Rappaport, it's Sutton's time. That's why he made this move. Per Jeff Darlington, Denver fully believes this guy is ready to be a star this year. Demaryius Thomas leaves behind 7.0 targets per game. What you were just trying to say with air yards, so like his target volume hasn't been good, but his target quality has been good. He ranks top 15 in deep targets per game. He ranks 5th among all receivers in end zone target market share, 6th in end zone targets per game. So that's incredible given the low volume. And like I just said, 7 targets up for grabs. Target volume should increase. He also has the matchup on his side. So the Texans are giving up the 4th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers lying to the left. And that's where Sutton runs 52% of his routes. So he has the matchup, increased volume, egregiously priced, touchdown upside, lots to like.
Yep. Can't really see him not making my cash team this week. So I expect very high ownership on Cortland Sutton. Interesting. What do you think for tournaments? Even in tournaments, Scott, you're going to play him. He's going to be like the low-owned wide receiver coming in at 35 to 40%. Almost never works out. I know it's different than trying to jam in Jermaine Kearse and the Jets. It's a little bit better of an offense. Has a pretty good spot here this week. Does that concern you at all?
Can you repeat that? What?
Just in tournaments with he's going to have one of the highest ownerships we've seen for a receiver all year.
Yeah, I mean, you can make that case because I mean we really haven't seen production from him. So as a contrarian fade, sure, but I'm not going to get cute in my let's say I'll have 3 tournaments in the what's the one that's $333 on DraftKings?
I know what you're talking. The 3 entry max.
Yeah.
The power sweep.
Yeah. Well, that too. So. I probably will have him on 2 of those or 3 of those.
All right. Tyler, let's talk someone I think is going to gain a little bit of traction this week as your dud player. He was supposed to be traded. The coach didn't like him. And then due to injuries, they had to throw him back into the mix. This is Devontae Parker, had 9 targets last week, 6 for 134 against Houston. So maybe this is some of the reason too why we like Sutton. He's 4,600 on DraftKings. Why do you not like Parker? I think he's going to be not like overly popular, but I don't know, 7.5 to 10% by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, which is like 6 to 9%, way too much for Parker. I just think he's absolute garbage, and I'm fading the chase this week. I think Kenny Stills was likely to return this week. Stills returning this lineup saps much of the target value that Parker inherited last Thursday night. With him out, with who's the other wide receiver? The other Dolphins wide receiver too.
Amendola, Wilson.
Wilson, yeah. With Wilson and Stills out, Parker was elevated to a ton of targets. I don't think that continues if Stills returns. He was a DNP on Wednesday, so make sure to monitor that. But I also think this is a kind of tough matchup here on the outside. Jermaine Johnson might make his return to the field this week after a couple weeks out. Forms a very strong tandem on the outside with Mo Claiborne. Parker runs 83% of his routes on the outside against those two. Not really liking that matchup there. Second lowest game total on the slate. This is probably just the game I avoid almost entirely.
Scott, you want to talk? You want to diss Stephon Diggs, who really got a huge target, huge amount of targets last week. What is it against Diggs here? Is Darius Slay that good that you don't want to play any Stephon Diggs? You'd rather just play Adam Thielen?
He actually hasn't been as good as he's been in the past. Really low PFF grade for him this year, Darius Slay. But I am kind of worried about the matchup. I think that is going to funnel more work to Adam Thielen, who has the way easier matchup. And even Laquan Treadwell, who has arguably the softest matchup of any wide receiver against Teez Tabor. Just something to keep in mind, because I do know he pops out as a value. He is really cheap. Also, Allen Robinson against Tre'Davious White, no interest in him. And then Marvin Jones against Xavier Rhodes is one I went back and forth on, because that should make me want to play Kenny Galladay over him. But what happened last year on Thanksgiving, Marvin Jones just absolutely smoked Xavier Rhodes. So that has me a little hesitant. But just wanted to mention those cornerback matchups as guys to maybe not necessarily outright fade. Definitely Allen Robinson, fade him, but the other two just to keep in mind.
What's Tyler? You have a strong take on Jones or Galladay. I think you're probably going to end up wanting to play one of them. Do you have a strong take? Marvin Jones 200 less on DraftKings. If Marvin Jones is able to beat Xavier Rhodes last year, when I think Rhodes was better, Scott, Rhodes PFF grade this year, I believe it's not amazing, correct?
I'll tell you in 1 second. Well, he actually didn't grade out very well last year, but he still was one of the more effective cornerbacks in terms of, yards allowed per route and coverage, per shadow game. What he does is, or at least last year, he gave up a lot of DPI yards, which negatively hurt his grade, but still made him a really tough cornerback for fantasy. And I do think he is, just at least from a fantasy point perspective, someone to be cautious of.
Tyler, what do you think? Galladay, 3 targets over the past 2 games. The steam run a little off on him. Jones had the big game last week. Which way do you lean there?
Yes, normally when it comes down to like a near tie like this, I try to lean on the guy that's going to be lower owned, and I think it's going to be Galladay this week, considering Marvin Jones is coming off the big game. We'll also have that tough matchup with Rhodes. Galladay's also just missed out on some like very big outings this year. We're waiting for that week for it to all come together. Maybe with Tate out of the picture and a few more targets going his way, maybe this is the week where it happens.
You playing any TJ Jones?
No, I've seen a lot of people pick him up in some of my dynasty leagues, and nah.
I've held him for like 2 years. I've been waiting for this moment, so I'm just there. But just
just in preseason DFS.
Yeah, probably won't be playing him too much.
I'd play Michael Roberts over him.
Let's go to tight ends, and Tyler, I'll stick with you. I've mentioned this a couple of times. Who did we roster in DFS last week? We rostered Njoku and we rostered Uzoma. and they both gave us goose eggs. And if we're paying any sort of price for guys that can theoretically give you zeros, like, would it surprise you if Trey Burton had like low single digits, or Austin Hooper, or Vance McDonald, or Kyle Rudolph, or Ed Dixon, or Ben Watson? Ben Watson gave a goose egg last time he played. There's just so many guys at tight end, and it's so gross this week. Outside of Greg Olsen and OJ Howard, I don't know if I even really want to roster any of these guys this week. I'm just so sick of it. I'm paying up for Travis Kelce. You go look at the DVOA, and you see the Browns sitting there at second. But the Browns also gave up 13 receptions for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns to Jared Cook and OJ Howard. I'm not buying the DVOA is kind of what I'm saying here. I think I'm going to play Travis Kelce in cash for the first time all season.
I think it's a bold move, but there's a lot of value plays this week after all the trades that happened that kind of open it up to allow you to. And like you said, the average price tight ends aren't really in great matchups, nor are they putting up bankable production that we really feel comfortable with rostering in cash. So I understand going with Kelce, especially if Tyreek Hill were to miss this week. He's battling a groin injury.
Believe he was back in practice today, like good to go. That's practice fully today. So yeah,
he was limited today in practice. Oh, I'm sorry. He was a full participant in practice on Wednesday. But you never know with a groin injury or I think it's a groin that he has, could flare up at any time. The thing with Kelce is he's Mahomes' number 2 option. Cleveland's middle linebacker Joe Sherbert remains out and has led to some quality tight end fantasy outings over the past few weeks. Pittsburgh's tight ends combined for 5 for 56. Tampa's went for 12 for 111. Kelce's not sharing that with anybody, so he's getting all those targets and receptions and receiving yards all to himself. Even if Tyreek Hill plays, I still think Kelce's a great option.
In before 2 Demetrius Harris troll touchdowns this week. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Scott, you share the same sentiment. It's Kelce. I like Olsen too. Olsen's very nice too. If you're going in the middle tier, he's very unlikely, I think, to give a 0. I think you can play OJ Howard. The rest of the position's pretty trash to me. And this is like with Sutton, with this mid-tier Lions. We didn't even talk about Philip Lindsay, who didn't get a pricing. He's 5,500 on DraftKings this week. You can make Kelce work in your lineup pretty easily. Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah. I agree. There's like really not much to add. It's just a brutal week for tight ends. Why not play the guy who outside of Zach Ertz is far and away the best at the position?
Yeah.
And with Tyreek Hill banged up too, it's just he's worth paying up for. I don't think it's that easy this week, but we'll see. I like Olsen too. Although for my values, I have Austin Hooper written up, but it's like again like a Peyton Barber thing where it's just like But if you want to go super deep down, I'm also looking at like Michael Roberts and Ryan Griffin as like the minimum place.
Yeah.
I would rather pay like $2,500 for just a complete shot in the dark than like $3,700 and get a 0 from Kyle Rudolph or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. brutal position this year. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. Austin, you have any other takes on Hooper? He was your value guy. Do you have any strong takes, or it's just like he's someone that's good at least get a couple of targets?
Yeah, I mean, he had those back-to-back double-digit target games, like the 2 best of his career, and then had that game against the Giants where I think he saw like 4 or 5 targets, and then had the bye. I think he's probably who he was against the Giants and in every other game of his career except for those other 2, but still, a value, I guess, not someone I'm excited to play, but the numbers will say he's the best value of the position. I don't know. Like I said, I'm willing to go so down low it's dirty, and outside of that, really just kind of want to play Kelce, and that's it.
Tyler, you want to talk about Trey Burton here? What's this? I mean, you can't really take the wide receivers against the Bills. You can't really take a lot of the guys against the Bills. They have a really good pass defense. You beat them against the run. I like Cohen this week. We didn't talk too much about him, but Philip Lindsay, these quick twitch athletes are just out of the running back position, just taking the NFL by storm, the really good ones. I do like Cohen quite a bit here. But what has you on Burton this week?
He's actually my dud. Yeah.
Oh, you know what it did? The Hewerman talk got me switched up here between the value and the dud.
So we want some punts. I'll talk some Hewerman here. I think he's an ultimate pivot off the chalky Sutton, who everyone will be gravitating towards this week in tournaments. Hewerman's $100 more than the Stoneman on DK, but provides immense touchdown potential. He has 12 targets inside the red zone. Next closest on the team was DT with 8. He has 8 targets inside the 10-yard line. That's tied with DT and Sutton. With DT out of the picture and teams focusing more on Sutton now, I think Hewerman could benefit from DT's valuable red zone looks as they shift towards him instead. Houston allowed the 4th most touchdowns last year. They ranked towards the middle of the pack in just about every statistical category this year versus tight ends. If you're punting, I think Hewerman's a great way to go.
Scott, 30 seconds. You had Hewerman as your dud. Is Tyler right, or are you right?
No, I just wanted to troll Tyler.
No surprise.
He has one catch over the past 2 weeks. Sutton's the play. But yeah, no, he's definitely in play as a cheap guy. Like I said, I might be looking at Ryan Griffin or Michael Roberts instead. But, all those guys are vaguely in play, but not really good plays.
All right, we're going to get on out of here. We got the Roto World show coming up next for you guys. Thanks for sticking it out through all of our costumes. Thanks to Ryan Fitzpatrick for joining us from the show. I know we had a lot of game planning going on this weekend, but hopefully you throw 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. I don't want to see you bench this week. And Tigger, I'll see you back in Disney. I think I'm going back there in December, so I'll be wearing this outfit for sure with my nice little Cinderella purse and be having a good time down there at Disney. So thanks to all you for watching. Thanks to Scott and Tyler, and we out you.